Thank you so much for joining us for INFOcon 2024. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Gretchen Stahlman, who will be presenting Meeting in the Middle, Desiloing Scholarly and Science Communication Research in the iSchools. Dr. Gretchen Stahlman is an assistant professor in the School of Information at Florida State University. She previously served as assistant professor of library and information science at Rutgers University. Gretchen earned her PhD degree from the University of Arizona School of Information in 2020. Her current research interests broadly include scholarly and science communication, scientific information life cycles, and the socio-technical systems supporting research infrastructures, resources, and data management. The overall purpose of Gretchen's present and future work is to inform open science and scholarly communication initiatives, as well as the development of methods, services, and infrastructures for long-term information management and responsible data science. With more than 10 years of prior professional experience related to librarianship and information management, she has also worked in an academic library and as a documentation specialist for the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, or ALMA, telescope construction project. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Dr. Stahlman.
Thank you, Amy. Okay. And everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Make sure I'm sorry, I'm in a different, I'm traveling right now, so I have a different computer set up. How do I move my slide, I wonder?
You should just be able to click on it and move your slide forward.
It's not actually moving. Let me exit the presentation. It's like totally okay there. Sorry about that. I think if we just start it over, it'll probably work. That is so bizarre. Nothing I do advances my slide. Oh, so sorry about this, everybody. But at least it gives people time to join. I hear that people are still joining.
Yes, and Dr. Stahlman is being very kind and presenting while she's at a conference in Costa Rica. So
yeah,
thank you for your patience.
Normally I have my a much different setup. So if is anyone a PowerPoint expert? I think I need to. Okay, presented. I was in kiosk. Maybe if I do presented by speaker. Okay. Okay. Now it works. Sorry about that. But anyway, thank you, Amy, for the nice introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm really excited to give this talk, actually. I'm going to talk a little bit about my research and teaching related to the topic of UFOs. And I'll explain that a little bit better. But the core of my research is basically grounded in librarianship or library and information science. I study how scientists communicate with each other and how they communicate with the public, how they share information and data, and how they establish knowledge. These processes are very complex and a vital ecosystem for our knowledge about the universe and about ourselves. And it involves communication among scholars and communication with public stakeholders. Both are equally important. So the topic of the title of my talk is Meeting in the Middle, Desiloing Scholarly and Science Communication Research in iSchools. So how can we help to harmonize these areas of research? So In order to make that point, I'm going to present my recent research and perspectives on life cycles of scientific information, emphasizing these interconnected ecosystems of scholarly, which is internal to science, and science, which is public-facing communication. And to better draw these connections, I'm going to discuss a current research project and some courses in the Florida State University iSchool that explored heightened interest in, or that are exploring heightened interest in unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP, otherwise known as UFOs, as a way to teach and learn about science and knowledge processes. So an overview of my presentation, I am just going to start with a very brief background, introduction to myself. I'll talk a little bit, Amy did a nice introduction, but I'll talk a little bit specifically about my career path. And then I'll discuss UAP studies from an information science perspective and the importance of researching this topic across disciplines. I'll highlight two recent research projects that I've engaged in areas of scholarly and science communication, respectively. And I'll close with some thoughts for moving forward with UAP studies and iSchool's research and teaching. Okay, so I know many of you are probably here because you might be considering a possible career in information science. So I thought it might help to briefly share a little bit about my meandering career trajectory in this area. So I began my professional career working in an academic library. I did my undergraduate degree at New Mexico Tech in Socorro, New Mexico, which was the site of a very famous UFO sighting back in the 1960s. And I started working for the Joseph R. Skeen Library as a student employee, actually, and then I transitioned to be a regular employee at the circulation desk, and all of this sparked my love of libraries and librarianship. Eventually, while I was in Socorro, I heard about a job across campus at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. You may be familiar with this from, various movies, music videos, but the Very Large Array Radio Telescope, is located near Socorro, and it's managed by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. I completed my master's in library science while I was working there as a documentation specialist and technical writer. So I was definitely multitasking when I pursued my library science degree. I primarily worked with engineering documentation for the large telescope project called ALMA, which is pictured here on this slide, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array Radio Telescope that was being built in Chile with participation from the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. And this led to an opportunity to live and work in Chile for several years, which was great. But while I was there, I wanted to do a PhD because I was interested in collaboration dynamics and how these big telescopes get built in the first place, and how this can scale to other large-scale technological developments. So I returned to the US to study in the iSchool at the University of Arizona in Tucson. I had some very interesting research experiences there. This led to lots of opportunities to work with the astronomy community. My dissertation was focused on scholarly communication and data management in astronomy. I conducted a survey of authors of astronomy journal articles to learn more about their data practices, the accessibility of data behind published journal articles. I also looked at the ways people search for data and identified data that they might want to reuse. And overall, I was interested in astronomy research practices, including things like institutional influences on research communities, how research resources are distributed, and how individual people relate to their experiences around data. And then, as Amy mentioned, I'm now in the School of Information at Florida State University. Previously, I was at Rutgers University. And my research has evolved to focus on frameworks to support scientists doing science, which also includes engagement with the public. These are some of my current research projects and teaching experience courses that I've taught. So in the area of open science and data collaboratives and scholarly and science communication, I'm exploring how people collaborate to rescue old scientific data and make it useful for contemporary research. Um, the next project, well, remember, how can we forget all of the online tools that, online web tools that were developed to track COVID during the pandemic. So I also have a project working on understanding best practices for design and development of these data dashboards and similar data dashboards in public health. And in terms of science communication, I'm also working on a project called AstroExcel, which is bringing together an international network of networks, researchers and practitioners in the areas of astronomy, culture, communication, education, and engagement. As far as teaching, I've taught iSchool courses at the graduate and undergraduate levels, including human information behavior, digital libraries, organizing information, social informatics, digital and data curation, and data organization. And next semester, I'll be teaching a course called UFOs and Information, which I will discuss in more detail a little later. And so all of these courses are primarily geared towards students studying to become librarians or other information professionals. Okay, so I'm sure you're all familiar with the topic of UFOs or unidentified flying objects to some extent. This has been ingrained in our popular culture for nearly a century now. On a personal note, I've been terribly interested in the mystery of UFOs, or UAP as it's now known, for as long as I can remember. But I'm not alone. A recent study showed that 65% of Americans believe in intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, and approximately 50% believe UFOs may be of extraterrestrial origin. So recent activity in various government agencies, such as NASA, has aimed to systematically understand and explain these observations. And the term UFO was rebranded to be UAP so that it can encompass other types of phenomena, not just flying objects, including things, possibly anomalous things seen in the ocean as well. Um, Alongside these trends, researchers, scientists are increasingly treating UAP as a topic worthy of systematic scientific inquiry, for which we need better and more data to identify UAP reports and to investigate these incidents that can't be explained. The conclusion of a recent NASA independent study team report is especially inspiring. They say UAP are one of our planet's greatest mysteries. Observations of objects in our skies that cannot be identified as balloons, aircraft, or natural known phenomena have been spotted worldwide, yet there are limited high quality observations. And we do not presently have the body of data needed to make definitive scientific conclusions about UAP. And so to me, this seems like a great opportunity for information science researchers to get involved in the complexities of this research. Okay, so there is a very long and intricate history behind the evidence, beliefs, and discourse surrounding UAP around the world and throughout human history. So just for context, I wanted to briefly and very superficially walk you through an overview of key events in the United States. So the modern history of quintessential UFOs and sensationalism in the US began in 1947 when a pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing aircraft that resembled saucers. And so this led to the term for UFOs, flying saucers. Later that year, a mysterious aircraft crashed at Roswell, New Mexico, which sparked long-lived conspiracy theories about a crashed UFO with alien bodies. Between 1952 and 1969, the United States Air Force operated a program to investigate UFO reports called Project Blue Book. The program collected many reports, with some cases unable to be explained. During that time, suspicion started to grow that the government was actively working to debunk UFO reports while covering up knowledge of extraterrestrial visitors. And in 1968, the final report of a University of Colorado study funded by the U.S. Air Force, also known as the Condon Report, concluded that UFOs were not worthy of scientific study, which arguably deterred scientists from researching this topic. Obviously, a lot of things happened between 27, oh, I skipped one. 2017, very, very important. we're fast forwarding to 2017 when our current movement towards scientific legitimacy began with a New York Times article called Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program. And in that article, the journalists revealed the existence of a secret government program to study UFOs, along with several military videos showing mysterious aircraft making maneuvers that are seemingly impossible. Okay, so then we have the Office of Naval Intelligence established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. It used to be aerial phenomena before it was anomalous phenomena for a minute. Task force to help standardize UAP reports. And their findings were released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in 2021. And this report concluded that UAP are a national security concern and pose a threat to aviation. In 2021, researchers began taking up the mantle to investigate UAPs, and a Harvard-based project called the Galileo Project was formed to systematically search for extraterrestrial technology on Earth and in space. A congressional hearing was held between 2022 and in 2023, military whistleblowers testified in Congress about their experiences with UAPs, including knowledge of crashed UAPs recovered by the government. Also in 2022, NASA gathered a group of experts to form the UAP Independent Study Team, and they were tasked with exploring how UAP might be integrated by NASA or investigated by NASA. The task force emphasized again the need for evidence-based research and data curation to study UAP. And it was around that time that the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, UAP terminology began to be used. In 2023, another group of researchers called the Soul Foundation formed to promote academic research. Earlier this year, the successor to the UAP task force, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, released their report of the historical record of U.S. government involvement with UAP, in which they concluded again that some UAP observations remain unexplained, but they state that conventional explanations can likely be found for all incidents if we have more and better data and techniques. And while it isn't part of UAP history yet, given the increased public interest and attention, recently individuals at the National Science Foundation thought that the topic merited focused discussion, and they supported a little workshop that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. I co-led this workshop with collaborators on the AstroExcel project I previously mentioned back in May. And finally, today, I don't know if any of you watched it, today there was another congressional hearing that took place called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth, in which individuals knowledgeable about UAP expressed their beliefs to Congress that information about UAP is being hidden through overclassification of information, and they advocated for more transparency, destigmatization, and opening up broad scientific inquiry into the question of what UAP are. Okay, so in terms of my own research agenda and my field, information science, I'm interested in conducting research on some of these topics. Organization of UAP information and data. I'm also interested in how credibility is established through scientific and social processes, and how researchers work to come to consensus on often contentious and stigmatized areas of study like UAP. I would like to explore UAP studies itself as a growing interdisciplinary field. I'm interested in how UAP knowledge networks form and are sustained. So these are the main areas that I hope to contribute to UAP studies as an iSchool researcher and instructor. In terms of interdisciplinarity, UAP are being studied across many other disciplines as well, and through various lenses ranging from physics and astronomy to engineering, psychology, religious studies, philosophy, data science, policy, and intelligence. So as someone who studies what scientists do and how knowledge is constructed, organized, framed, and politicized, I recently started to wonder where everyone else is in information science with respect to the UAP topic. Why aren't we discussing it more, as it's something of great public interest and fraught with problems that we're well positioned to address, such as data quality and misinformation. Furthermore, this topic is being legitimized for more rigorous scientific study. It's being taken seriously by academics. This is not only in terms of national security or aviation safety or developing better sensors to collect observations, but also understanding human behavior and human experiences surrounding UAP, which are also very important things that we should be studying. In other words, there are many information science related challenges to this research, both technical and social. And in case you're not too familiar with information science is concerned with the convergence of people, technology, and information, including the social and psychological aspects of how people interact with information, find information that they need, how they evaluate the quality of information, and so on. And we also deal with classification, storage, and retrieval, and dissemination of information, and we focus on understanding how people and systems organize, manage, and use information. All very relevant to studying UAP, especially in this data-driven world that we're in. So I see UAP as an important research challenge for iSchools, but also as an opportunity for engaging with information science through a controversial topic that is part of the fabric of our history and culture in unique ways. So to begin visualizing the key topic of this talk, the de-siloing scholarly and science communication part, I wanted to introduce a metaphor. I've used it before, and it's very handy for helping to visualize the flow of scientific information and communication. So you might recognize this framework as the phases of matter, liquid, solid, gas, and plasma, and how matter can change phases. So in trying to depict this broader communication ecosystem, phases of matter can also be a metaphor for phases of information. So in this depiction, we have community curated information, which is made solid through processes like curating information or data in a repository or database, or publishing a journal article in a journal. We have active research, which is liquid because it can change shape as the research processes unfold. It's very fluid while active research is happening. We have information broadcasted through channels like news media and social media, which is more dispersed and difficult to control. And we have on the far right side, hot topic information, which is the equivalent of plasma in the metaphor. It's volatile and sensitive to outside forces. In the metaphor framework, plasma is ignited rather than existing under normal conditions. And so we can imagine that a lot of communication about UAP happens here in the hot topic plasma space via media and social media. So let's break it down. Scholarly communication focuses on information and knowledge construction as scientists work to establish their research findings. And in the phases of information metaphor, we can see that we can see this in the phase shifts between curation and active research. This is where findings are established through curation or archiving of materials in a more permanent way, and reworked through reuse of these materials among scientific communities and research institutions. But in the metaphor here, these actions are part of a larger communication ecosystem, in which impacts and effects can occur outside of this zone. So the holisticness, the interconnectedness is something I'm trying to emphasize here with this visualization. And again, we see here scientific research and development of technology happening in the active, the liquid stage. And on the other side, we see information phase shifts that might be interpreted as science communication and education. In this feedback loop, scientific information can actually bypass the scholarly communication side and go directly to the public through social media or scientists' podcasts or interviews. And then this can further impact the research process through feedback from these broader audiences and communication channels. And then what you have, we have what can be considered as misinformation, where communication can get ignited deliberately or inadvertently. And here it's especially important to remain cognizant of all of these connections between the other parts of the diagram. So here we have the phases of information metaphor, and I just want to emphasize that it's important to remain aware that information transitions in any section of the diagram can have effects in other areas. So things like things we do as scientists or researchers are closely tied to public dissemination and science communication outcomes. And we in the iSchools can and should be aware of this in our research and teaching practices. So now let's move on to talk about scholarly and science communication about the UAP topic. So to give you an idea of the type of information science research I'm doing related to UAP in an iSchool, I'm going to briefly summarize the outcomes of a short paper that was presented at the I-Conference, or International Conference of the Schools of Information. This is an important conference in our field, so it was really exciting to be able to present this topic in front of my colleagues there, and I'm glad it was accepted. So in the area of scholarly communication about UAP research, I wanted to take a look at the academic publications about UAP and how the treatment of the topic has changed over time as a subject of scholarly inquiry. So I looked at more than 2,000 articles published between 1967 and 2023, and I ended up with 174 records in my final data set. For this analysis that I'm presenting right now, I was most interested in the 34 papers published since the 2021 Office of the Director of National Intelligence UAP report, which called for more scientific study and identified data availability and data quality as key issues, as well as the sociocultural stigma as obstacles to UAP studies. And indeed, the figure shows the distribution of retrieved relevant items published per year, with a large spike in 2021, seemingly coinciding with the report, possibly coinciding with the report. I grouped the articles into broad categories: physical and natural sciences, social sciences, arts and humanities. In the first category, several papers describe instruments for detecting UAP, and several papers speculate about their nature. In the second category, social sciences, this includes studies about conspiracy theories, media representation, cultural, political, and religious aspects of UAP encounters. And the third category overlaps quite a bit with cultural and historical narratives and perspectives. None of the studies honed in or supported an extraterrestrial explanation, and most of them target various human and social implications rather than research about UAP, with the exception of physical and natural sciences, where they are working to develop instruments and methods to detect and identify UAP. There were no records classified in the information science and library science area in the recent set of 34 papers. So I began to see this as an opportunity for us in the iSchools to join this new wave of research about UAP. Okay, so there's so much mobilization happening in the government and academia, and iSchools are well positioned to address many relevant research areas in this intellectual space as the knowledge is produced and organized. In terms of data curation and knowledge organization, all of the recent government reports emphasize that we need better and higher quality data. So this speaks to areas like data quality, reliability, standardization, and so on. We should be looking into how people seek, share, and evaluate information about UAP, and explore things like the role of online communities in shaping these belief systems. Obviously, data science techniques can be help us make sense of big data and identify patterns and anomalies to detect UAP in large data sets. Library services are also needed to help users find credible information. So promoting critical thinking and information literacy is important. With the prevalence of the topic in the media, librarians should be equipped to communicate with patrons knowledgeably and direct them to appropriate information. A really fascinating aspect of UAP studies is the sensationalism and secrecy surrounding UAP and government involvement, which leads to problematic narratives and conspiracy theories, but also perhaps attempts to shape public opinion through social media. So, in other words, who's controlling the narrative and how and why? And the topic of UAP is widely engaging and ingrained in popular culture. Therefore, it's an opportunity to teach people about science. And finally, science and technology studies and science of science lenses can be used to analyze social construction of knowledge around UAP and the emergence of the field of UAP studies itself and related knowledge. Okay, so let me move on to the next research project that I am presenting today. As I mentioned before, I was recently involved in an NSF-funded workshop about UAP research and science communication earlier this year in May. So I'll discuss some of the workshop activities and preliminary outcomes. We're still working to synthesize the findings, but if you go to the website shown here, or if you just go to astroexcel.org and click on initiatives in the menu bar, you can access and read the executive summary that has more detail about the event that I'm talking about. So as part of this amazing NSF-funded initiative, our called AstroExcel, which I mentioned that I'm also working on, our AstroExcel or our ExcelNet NSF program officer requested supplement proposals, and this means that they'll give you a little bit of money on top of your existing award to do some extension of the project. So the call for supplement proposals came out on the same day as the NASA Independent Study Team public panel report on UAP, which I just happened to be watching and suggested to the group, like, hey, why don't we do a workshop about science communication and UAP? So it was funded. We received the grant to do the workshop, and we held the workshop in Washington, D.C. in May of this year. A group of about 25 participants was selected. We were very careful with targeted invitations. We had an application process, and the expertise was distributed again across the thematic areas shown here: information and knowledge construction, science communication and education, historical and cultural narratives, global political affairs and policy, and scientific research and technology. So we kind of wanted an even mix of experts across those areas to inform the discussion. So in the end, we had a number of astronomers in attendance, astronomy outreach and planetarium, and observatory communications folks, some UAP researchers in different disciplines, and members of the intelligence community. The workshop aimed to stimulate interdisciplinary discourse and collaboration, and to explore effective communication and education strategies to foster discussion about UAP. We were not asking if UAP are real, what UAP are. We only wanted to talk about the communication about UAP and the opportunities for educators and information professionals. So topics for discussion were developing effective communication and education strategies, exploring the intersection of UAP with societal implications, understanding the data, information, and knowledge ecosystems, and trying to integrate this topic of UAP and science communication into the broader framework of the NSF AstroExcel project, which I don't have time to discuss, but you can learn a little more if you go to the website. We had 3 breakout sessions. These were spread out over 2 days. We also had guest presentations by virtual participants too, which were integrated into the workshop. And we had networking opportunities through coffee breaks. So it was a very full and wonderful agenda. We had 3 breakout sessions. The first one actually leveraged the phases of information diagram that I just showed you to establish breakout groups with experts in the different areas and explore those information phase transitions. So we established 4 groups loosely based on the categories of interest that the participants chose when they registered for the workshop. And we had people get into groups for about 20 minutes and discuss the topics shown here. What are the types of information and data in each area? What are the tension points? How can we facilitate appropriate phase shifts and construct useful evidence and knowledge? And then after 20 minutes, everyone switched to different mixed groups and discussed the same questions. In our second breakout group, educating about UAP, participants self-selected this time into 3 areas of interest related to education, formal education, informal education, and university level education. And each group discussed how to respond to different scenarios, presenting education and communication challenges. Our third breakout session was split into 2 parts. In part 1, participants self-selected into 3 topic areas: government and policy, academia, and communication and public engagement. And they discussed barriers to prevent cross-collaboration among networks, the need to break down those barriers, and what could help build connections between people to effectively develop and share knowledge and communicate. And then during the break, the organizers kind of reviewed those notes, and we came up with 4 what we called working groups that were suggested by participants. And so then the second part of this breakout session focused on the working groups, which are first, the development of curricular resources. So this addresses the lack of guidelines for how to teach about UAP and identified a need for educators to share curricular materials and strategies with each other across disciplines. Another group discussed a need for a web portal or a one-stop shop clearinghouse for UAP content to support science literacy. A citizen science application was imagined to collect UAP reports and help people identify objects observed. The last one, a strong outcome of the workshop, was a need for a follow-on event. So this group began discussing how to support and implement another workshop, which we are still actively working on and hoping to have another one soon. And as I said, we're still analyzing the outcomes of the workshop, but some high-level themes include the importance of historical representations and context to inform current discussions. In other words, don't forget about the past. Even though we have a new word, UAP, it's not UFO anymore. There's a huge history behind this. And then second, there's still a great deal of stigma and negativity surrounding studying UAP, which needs to be addressed if we're going to get anywhere with this scientific research. We need to build trust across UAP networks and respectful dialogue. Third, while it's important to collect observations through sensors and reports, we also need to investigate what individuals believe about UAPs and why. So the social science lens is critical as well. And a final outcome of the workshop is the need for a follow-on workshop, which we're seeking funds for now. And one way to de-silo, coming back to this idea of de-siloing scholarly and science communication in these areas, is through the education pipeline. So next, I'm going to discuss a few examples of how the UAP topic has been positively integrated into graduate level university courses at FSU. And I think I might be getting a little over time, so I might try to speed some of this up. So as one of our workshop participants stated in the workshop, UAP data is the messiest data possible. So last semester in a class called Data Organization that I taught at the master's level at FSU, I gave my students the option of exploring the universe of UAP data and recommending solutions and frameworks for better organizing the data and the field of UAP studies. So in their final projects, the students grappled with reasons UAP data is considered to be messy, stemming from inconsistent reporting practices, lack of standardization, obviously the stigma associated with studying the topic. But across the board, UAP data is difficult to manage for various reasons. So it was a great case study for a data organization class. There's varied sources of information, from eyewitness reports to government and military reports, sensor data, amateur scientist data. We have inconsistent data collection. Also subjectivity of data, stigma and secrecy are huge issues, obviously, and data quality varies, databases are scattered, and the UAP field is plagued by hoaxes, misinformation. It's hard to make sense of anything in the space with these misdirections all around. And we have human biases as well to consider. Humans are biased in how they perceive things. People can see the same thing differently. And so that's another issue with reporting data. So coming back to the topic of the talk, information science can help bring clarity to the UAP topic by adhering to certain principles, best practices for organizing information, and understanding and satisfying the needs of users and communities and other stakeholders. So I think with the data organization class and the UFOs and information class next semester, I think it's an opportunity to start training students in our field to work on things like ensuring data quality, reliability of UAP data, also developing robust information systems that ensure that data related to UAP sightings and analysis is easily acceptable or accessible to those who need it. We need more standardization in the way that data is collected, stored, and reported. Information science can support the integration of data from different sources and also help to handle scalability, which is large and growing data collections. Governance and ethics are also extremely important topics, which involves creating policies for data ownership, access, ensuring privacy protections for individuals reporting sightings, for example. And so information science provides frameworks for these governing policies, and we did discuss this quite a bit in data organization. And finally, we have the FAIR principles for making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And this means designing systems that make data easy to locate, open to users, compatible with other data sets, and reusable for future research, which is something we should be striving for with UAP data and in UAP studies. And finally, overall, we just need better policymaking and decision-making, and we need to establish credibility and scientific rigor in the study of UAPs, and information science can help with this in many ways, moving UAP studies into the realm, further into the realm of legitimate scientific inquiry. Let's see. Oh. So that was the gist of what we covered in data organization that is applicable to UAP research and scholarly communication. On the science communication and science literacy side, I'm also now developing a course called UFOs and Information, which explores the intersection of UAP and information science and takes a serious and critical approach to exploring scientific processes through the lens of UAP. So this course will be taught in the School of Information at Florida State in spring 2025. But, we're not alone. Other universities are also increasingly offering UAP courses in fields like astronomy, religious studies, and philosophy. I'm aware of one university that's creating a UAP studies master's degree program. So this seems, again, like a timely opportunity to engage with both research and education about UAP. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to do that in this course. And just some final broader thoughts about information science and UAP studies in general. First, to advance UAP research, we need research resources like grants from the National Science Foundation. So we made a good step with the UAP workshop, and we need to continue that momentum. It's easier to make the case in physical and natural sciences where you can collect tangible data that can be analyzed for multiple purposes. But there are other components of UAP studies like education, engagement, communication, culture, social aspects. So we need to also have funding for social and humanistic study as well, and we need more university courses and standardized curricula in the iSchools and other fields. This will be increasingly possible through development of scholarly networks and incentives for researchers to participate instead of penalties, which is still a common concern of researchers due to stigma. And believe me, I've thought about it a lot in my research, whether this is a wise thing to get involved with. And again, in terms of data organization, UAP data is laying around all over the place in various formats and levels of quality. So we can be useful there. In terms of science communication, we have really big problems and need to consider messaging around UAP. This extends to scientists engaging with the public on social media directly, because when one is seen as an expert or an influencer, anything you say is consumed and can be misconstrued. So that's something that might be happening in areas of UAP communication as well. And UAP can enchant people with science, but it can also disenchant people with science because of all of its various issues, unique issues. So we need to support both the social and physical science research in UAP studies, and our strengths in social science research about science and technology in iSchools can play a key role in this ecosystem. So in conclusion, here again is the whole phases of information metaphor, where all of the areas are interconnected in terms of communication and transformations of information as we seek to learn more about ourselves and the universe that we inhabit. Okay, I think I actually ended on time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stahlman. I'm going to stop the recording now, but if you do have some time for some questions, there were a couple in the chat. Thank you.
Okay.